everybody. I'm like sweating just from that intro. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for showing up today live to come hang out with us. And I will be introducing what us means at this moment. But first of all, hi, welcome. My name is Elsie Escobar. I am the Director of Community and Content over at Libsyn. And this is our, Libsyn channel, if you will, because we are streaming live in so many different places. And we are going to be chatting all about how to avoid the Podfade. No Podfade guarantee for 2023. And I am so excited to be co-hosting this with the amazing Bethany Hawkins. Woohoo! So wait, hold up. Now you're going to have to be quiet and just pretend like you just have to mug it up for the camera now, because she's been working as a podcast producer, mentor, coach for a bit now. Her company is called Crackers and Soup, and she helps folks optimize their podcast, their work, and truth be told, their lifestyle so that they can sustain their podcast. She's really essentially your virtual coworker, friends. She once historically ignored people to get their podcast heard. Bethany, I am so excited to have you here. I cannot even take it. Yes.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Elsie. Happy belated birthday. Happy 50% off Valentine's Day. Happy 50% off candy, Valentine's Day candy. Happy Black History Month. It's all of the good things that we're coming together.
I'm so excited. I don't even know what to say, but I think this is a conversation that we absolutely need to be having. Because one of the key things that I think you and I both have seen is the amount of people who get feeling very overwhelmed with this whole podcasting thing, right? There are a lot of moving pieces that oftentimes we don't really realize are a thing. We don't realize that this is, it's going to be taking so long or anything like that. So I'm here to, we are both here to help folks out so that we can continue moving forward. Now, before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Number one, next week, Dave Jackson is going to be doing Libsyn Podcasting Basic Series right on YouTube in the same, actually not on YouTube, on Crowdcast. There's going to be a link there's going to be dropped in the chat so that you guys can sign up. And again, it's free. It is just about Libsyn, so it's a little bit more centric to that. And so I'm really excited about that. And the second thing is, if anybody has any questions, if you guys are here watching us right now and you have any questions that you want Bethany and I to answer, we're going to have some time at the end, all the way towards the end of our conversation here. And if you can, please type in Q:, and then type your question. It's just a little bit easier for not only the team to find it, but also for me to be able to find it so that I can, tee up those questions as we start to move forward, which is what we want to do. All right. So we are so excited to be getting started here. All right. So first of all, what have you seen, Bethany Hawkins? And I know you've been doing this now for a little bit, so you have a sense of years, right? There's been you have experience, and you're starting to see patterns, possibly questions that keep coming up all the time. So as we start 2023, what have you seen that might be some issues that are coming up for folks?
It's really interesting. In my clientele, I have seen that the people who have their podcast that drops weekly, they are the ones that are more consistent than the ones that drop either every other week or once a month. And I think that is because of habit. So when you start to form a habit and a pattern and you break that for some reason, it's just so easy to say, okay, I'll just hop on back again, I can miss another week or two. It's fine. But when you have that consistency of publishing your episode weekly, when you have that 1 week where you drop off, it's kind of kind of staggering a little bit because you're used to looking at your download numbers the next day and seeing the engagement from your audience. And when you don't have that, it's like, oh, okay, where is the disruption? So I say that because a lot of people ask, should I drop weekly? Should I drop every other week? And I usually tell my clients, what is, you know, you best. What are you going to stay faithful to? And if you're not going to stay faithful to every week, don't do it. Do every other week. But if you are one of these people that has a tendency to drop off if your habit is broken, I would truly recommend trying to drop that and publish that episode weekly.
That sounds like a great idea to me. I think that if I may add a little context to what you're saying, I currently have a weekly show and I have a fortnightly show, and which is 2 times a month, folks. And one of the reasons that I did it for the 2 times a month show is because I knew that I was going to be able to keep that up a little bit better for me. The weekly show is for sure a little bit of a bigger lift because it's as soon as you drop it, you start up again. And I felt like I really wanted to have a little bit of a lull and or like to add to the conversation or at least to my publishing schedule and not make it too crazy. So that was very, very helpful. But you actually have some stats that you want to talk about. I'd love for you to take over and kind of share some of the things that you learned. And I do believe that we are going to be able to share some of these stats in the chat, I hope. As we do this, I'm going to copy and paste it, and hopefully the team is going to be able to put some of this stuff in there.
Absolutely. So for those who don't know, we're actually talking about pod fading. And I apologize because we didn't introduce our topic. So what pod fading is, it's when you stop posting new episodes, new content for an extended period of time. So in preparing for this conversation, I love stats. I love figures. You can't argue with numbers. They are what they are, what they are. And when Elsie and I were talking in preparation for this conversation, I was like, I'm going to find some stats. They blew my mind away. I was not prepared. So per Amplify and Pod News, 44% of podcasts have less than 3 episodes. And when Elsie and I were discussing this, she actually brought up a very valid point. So in 2020, a lot of people had the opportunity to either create a podcast or get really excited about listening to podcasts or be a co-host in a podcast. Since the world has kind of gone back to working outside of the home and quote unquote normalcy, it's not really normal, but it's more reminiscent of 2019 than 2020 was. People have had other priorities. They're not staying home as long as they have been. So that could be why they haven't dropped anything more recent. But podcasts have less than 3 episodes. That's not even a month of content if you're dropping every week. That's 3
crazy.
weeks. I have dedicated to an exercise routine for 3 weeks. Which is absurd because I just fall off for exercising.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And also 720,000 podcasts have more than 10 episodes. But only 156,000 are releasing a weekly episode. So from 720,000 to 156, that's an astronomical number.
Yeah. It is amazing when you start to look at the wealth of content that we think is out there. But then when you start to see the consistency and how many people are actually going to be sustaining this thing, it becomes so much more challenging to keep that momentum going because it's like what you were just mentioning about, health, right? There's so many times when we will say like, I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to do that workout, or I'm going to do the whatever, stop eating sugar and all of those things. And one thing that I have found out too, and this also applies to podcasting, is if you start to set yourself up for success for these things, I know one thing, like if you want to build a habit around something, take away all of the obstacles that you have towards that. If you're going to be giving up sugar, maybe not having it in your pantry is probably going to be a really wonderful step, or just giving yourself those small little things that are there. Same thing for podcasting as well. Where are your roadblocks, right? Where are your roadblocks to move forward so that you don't let those things just get in your way, which is kind of crazy. Now, if I may share a little bit of my own story here, Bethany, I actually have 2 podcasts that I have podfaded. The first one is called Elsie's Yoga Class. And in Elsie's Yoga Class, that was my very, very first podcast. I launched that podcast July 2006, like 2006, because that was a long time ago. And I made it all the way to 100 episodes, or maybe like 103. And then my life changed. I had a baby, I moved to a new place, and all of that stuff. I had every desire to continue doing that podcast, but my life had completely changed. And after a while, I had to let it go. Like I'm still having a hard time saying this, and I haven't published an episode on that feed since 2013. So it's been a while since that happened. The other show that's essentially podfaded was another show that I had a great idea for. It's called Sobre Podcasting. It's a Spanish podcasting show. So it was about podcasting, and it was not a co-hosted show. It was my first solo show. I had an idea of what I wanted it to do. I was working very, very hard to put it together, and I got 2 episodes out, and I burned myself. I burned myself out with 2 episodes. And that was like, I don't know. I had to quit. I had to see it for myself. It was way too much. I kept going no, next, I don't have to do it weekly. I can do it bi-weekly. I can do it monthly. I can do it quarterly. I can do it every 6 months. And it's after a while, it's okay, it's been 2 years. I think that you
when I say preach, Elsie, I say preach, because I have an award-winning podcast, Chatting Over Chowder. You are on it, and I podfaded, and I pay my mortgage through podcasts. My whole business, my whole bank account is from podcasting. But as you said, life just got crazy. My business exploded, which is a beautiful thing, which I'm so thankful and so blessed. But also, I had to prioritize what was going to get done and what wasn't. And it sounds terrible to say, I will choose my clients over me every time, which is a horrible habit. I need to work on that.
Well, hey, come on now. Come on now.
But I loved my podcast. It was successful. I had phenomenal conversations. And ironically enough, per the stats that I had found, quote unquote, an active podcast is a podcast that has dropped at least 1 episode in 2022. So according to these stats, my podcast is active because I did drop an episode in 2022, which is really interesting. So I think that the term what an active podcast is, there is a lot of wiggle room when it comes to that, but also it is a frame of mind for the host. Like you had stated, you were like, I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to go back to it. And I keep saying that to my co-host, Charline. I'm going to edit everything, and we're going to get everything done, and I'm going to upload it. And she's like, okay, Bethany.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of what the industry standard is in regards to active, but it's also the frame of mind of the host. Are you planning on coming back to it? And if not, what are your goals? Do you want to do an episode where you share with your audience, thank you for riding with me, but unfortunately life got in the way and I'm going to be wrapping this up. This was a phenomenal experience, blah, 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 blah. Or do you want to do that preparation? Schedule a time on your calendar when you say, this is when I'm back. This is what I'm going to put into place so I can set myself up for success so that I can come back with a vengeance and give my audience the information that they're really coming for.
Yep. And I'm actually going to share a little bit of stats here, folks, because Bethany shared some stats in terms of the publishing of the podcast. that she just got. And team, if for some reason you can get a link to some of those stats, that would be amazing. I'm sure you guys could do a little bit of research so that we could put it on in the chat and follow up and whatnot. So I do have an ongoing show. It is called The Feed, the official Libsyn podcast. And in every single episode, Rob definitely shares all of the stats that we have going on for us in terms of the Libsyn interface. So this is not all encompass. These stats that you're going to see, they're not all encompassing of the entire podcasting place. This is the stats that are inside of the Libsyn interface with the accounts that are inside Libsyn. And he reports on these stats every single episode. And these were the January stats. So in terms of, these are monthly download numbers. So you can see here that the top 50% of episodes that are released every month. So like you release like let's say February 1st, and then 30 days afterwards, 30 to 40, 45 days is what he measures here, get 156 downloads. That's not that much. And we promise we're going to talk about why this is important for you to see. So 50% of all podcasts hosted on Libsyn get more than 156 downloads per episode per month, and 50% of them get less than that. So just keep that in mind. The top 20% get about 1.2 1,200 downloads per episode per month. That's like the top 20%. All the rest of them are, I think, beyond our reach. So I'm not going to go like too crazy into those, simply because who's getting 35,000 downloads per episode per month? I don't know. God bless you, whoever you're doing that is, but it's not us. So part of it is that that's what we want. But here's this is another kind of stats that I want you to look at. So in terms of the Libsyn podcast, if you are getting 5,000 downloads per episode per month, you are in the top 7.7%. Now, if you want to aim towards something to hit at with your podcast too, the average number of downloads per episode per month in January, the adjusted mean was 1,561 downloads. So just as a thought for you guys to keep that in mind. And I want to put a framework as to why I brought this up, by the way. It is actually around what Bethany was talking about before, which are the goals that you have. So if for whatever reason, like let's say you're getting that 156 downloads per episode per month. And what is your goal? Is your goal to make money off of advertising? Is your goal to have people buy your product or service? Is your goal to have people click through to your sponsors that you might have on your show and use the coupon code that they gave you? Is your goal to have your own membership, be running your own membership and try to figure that out? If you have 156 downloads per episode per month, then you're going to have to sort of think about what is the conversion rate? What do you right? Because you want to know what's actually going to work and not work for you when it comes to those downloads. There are some folks that you can stay at 100 downloads per episode per month and you'll be peachy. You'll be able to get whatever your goal is. But if you're wanting to make direct money off of advertising, you're going to need more than that, right? So if I were to tell you one thing to do for your podcast, if you are looking to not Podfade, to make it worth your time, you have to even do a little bit of and I didn't do this research for you because there's so many different variables. Look at your conversion rates for whatever it is that you want. Meaning, what's the conversion rate for sign up, having somebody sign up for a membership? What's the conversion rate for people clicking through to a landing page? What's the conversion rate for people signing up for your coaching? What you have to start to look at those, and you can do all that research online. They're everywhere. It's everywhere. And then start to really make choices based on that. So that's just a little bit to share.
I love what you're sharing because what you're saying is marketing. And
Correct.
people don't appreciate that you have to market your podcast. And I feel that there are three different reasons why people podfade. It becomes overwhelming or life becomes overwhelming, just an overarching theme of overwhelm. The second is that people aren't having the ROI or return on investment that they think that they're going to have. They feel as if they published these episodes and it's been in publication for 3 months. How come they're not getting 7,000 downloads and all the foldable dollar bills? Because you may be dropping those links to listen to my podcast. You may be sharing it with your family members. But are you putting it in your newsletter? Are you sharing it in groups that would benefit from listening to this topic and this idea? Are you going above and beyond and telling people, I have this podcast? If somebody's dropping a comment in social media and you just discussed that on a recent episode, are you going in and saying, hey, that's so funny, I actually discussed this on my podcast, let me know if you want the link and I will slide in your DMs and send it to you? There is a very unsleazy way
Mm-hmm.
to promote the fact that you have these discussions on your podcast, which is going to bring in more listeners, which is going to bring in more downloads, which is potentially going to bring you in more money. The third reason that I want to say, and it's funny, Danielle Corbett Desir, we were actually on a platform a couple of days ago discussing something else, but she had said about people being afraid of success.
Mm.
And I thought that that was very valid because when you are having 40 downloads per episode, it's very different than when you have 500 downloads per episode. And that can feel very overwhelming and very scary when people are coming up to you or people are sending you messages saying, this really impacted me. It's like, wow, I am really changing the ideology of this topic and this thinking. And I'm now seen as a thought leader on this in this conversation. Whoa, I need
Yeah.
to take a break. So really tapping into your, again, we always talk about your why and it's so woo, but it's so true. Your why. Why did this happen? Like it may be because you have been busy, and also, do you have a lot of eyeballs on you and that's very intimidating?
My God, my God. I love what you guys are saying over here in the chat. I'm glad that you're like hearing what we're saying. Now we're going to go back a little bit more into maybe a little bit more tactics around this, because yes, your why is incredibly important, and I'm sure you've done the work, and I know we always keep on at like pointing at this because it is the most important thing, but also some, strategies and tactics are good as well. So, one of the things that we were thinking about covering here is in terms of planning your year. Planning your year. So, in terms of goal setting, what are some things that you have seen from your clients, or maybe that you have wanted to do yourself, or that have worked in the short term or long term too, Bethany, about, making sure that you continue to do podcast consistently from the gate?
I gotta tell you, the best thing about hiring a team and,
Mm,
not only my team, but any team is they hold you, a good team will
yes.
hold you
Yes.
accountable. A phenomenal team will send you weekly things that you need to get accomplished in order to get that next episode out. And then if you ghost them, they will send you another reminder or message very lovingly. I'm not speaking about my own company. I'm speaking of my own
Yeah.
company. But
Yep.
but having somebody that you have to, in a way, answer to and kind of hold your head down in shame and say, and then you can talk to them about what's happening, really helps to hold you accountable and get those episodes dropped.
Yep. That is so, so wonderful. I know for one thing that has been very helpful to me working with separate teams is really understanding what works for me as a producer and how to communicate that with anybody who's supporting me. And in being able to do that, it's so very helpful, because you can understand the way that you work is so important for you to be able to get things done. I need to be poked all the time, not because I don't want to do the work or I'm doing too much. It's because my brain is constantly moving on to the next thing. And I sometimes really need somebody to say, like, you need to get that to me now. I respond better to that than for me to have to do it all on my own. I feel that accountability for myself works really, really well. And that is really important. And I would say, if you're not ready to hire a team, I'm going to pitch you here for a moment, Ms. Bethany. But I know you have discovery calls. So I would say take a discovery call with somebody who does this for a living without hiring them. A lot of the discovery calls are free, and they're super short and on point. But you communicating with a professional around this and verbalizing what your pain points are, what your style is, taking the seat of the boss yourself, because you're hiring a team, is going to help you understand how to move forward better, because you're verbalizing what your blocks are. And sometimes you'll realize, wow, I can actually take care of this myself. Wow, there's like a workflow I could do for this. And you can get the lens or the mirror of somebody like Bethany, who's going to say to you, hey, I can help with this, this, and this, but it sounds to me that you can figure these things out on your own. Because I don't think that, Bethany, please correct me if I'm wrong. If you know somebody's pretty capable and they just have like small little roadblocks, you're just going to call it out and be like, listen, you can do this on your own. But
it depends on how layered their complexity is, or what their hiccup is. Because in those circumstances, I actually recommend a consultation call. A consultation is a lot financially more savvy and accessible than hiring my team to do all of the work. And I'm looking in the comments and I'm reading the chats, and a lot of people are saying, I'm my own team. And I completely understand that when you're first starting off. If you are your own team, know what you love to do and know what you loathe to do. The things that you loathe to do, you can hire people to do that on places such as like Fiverr. If you are working within a limited budget, you can right now, AI is such a hot topic. You can assist an AI to help you with your show notes. These are things that are going to, like, having your show notes, having audio, having somebody create graphics for you. These are things that are going to help with your marketing and getting your podcast seen if you are unable to invest. The majority of my clientele are business owners who are using the podcast to bring focus and concentration on their business. So it's a literal business investment to retain my team. But if you are a solo individual really loving your podcast idea and you're getting bogged down with all of the minutia of creating the podcast, do what you love, farm everything out for, I don't want to say cheap money, for inexpensive money or whatever your budget can sustain.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and see if we can give the folks something that you have. Maybe you have a system for, let's take the first 10 episodes, or maybe you already launched and you can just think about the next 10 episodes. Do you have some like step-by-steps that you can share with us?
I do. Firstly, I want to mention most podcasts go through seasons. The majority of seasons are 10 to 12 episodes. So after you drop, let's say your first 4 episodes that you launched with, you don't have that many episodes left. You could either have 4 more episodes or you could have 8, depending upon how long you want your season to be. So firstly, determining how long you want your season to be is the first step. Secondly, if you're running out of ideas and that's why you're pod fading, look at what you're talking about on social media. That is going to give you a really clear idea of what your thoughts are, and if people are engaging with that post and that commentary. That's a podcast episode right there. It doesn't have to be 6 hours long. It could be 25 minutes if you're doing a solo podcast on that particular topic that has gotten everybody all riled up, i.e. Rihanna in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Thirdly, I don't know what number I'm on. I would
The
say
next thing.
the next one. I would say get an organization tool. And there are a lot of systems that allow you to utilize their system for free. A lot of people use Notion in podcasting. We actually use Asana. You can use Trello. Having some place where you're inputting or uploading all of the information regarding the moving parts in the body of the podcast is going to be so useful, because if you have your graphics in one place, your audio in another place, your copy in another place, all of that is going to become very overwhelming. But if you have it in a safe, tight little place, like an organization tool like Notion or Asana or Trello, you're more apt to continue on with it because it's all right there and accessible to you.
Yeah, there's nothing like having a template for yourself and a workflow for yourself. There's nothing like it. I have built templates for all of my shows. And every time that I'm writing show notes, all I really do is I actually duplicate my template. Everything's pre-done. I don't have to think any harder. I know exactly what I'm going to do. And whenever I find myself doing the same thing over and over and over again, I immediately create a template. And I personally, for one of my shows, there is no team that's working with me. I do have an editor for it, but I do absolutely everything else. And I have templates. I have a to-do template, as in like all the bits that I already do anyway, meaning I don't have to go to my checklist. I know it, but I like to have it there because it reminds me of things. I also have reminders that I produce every couple of weeks, and those reminders go in and they just remind me, you need to be done with your show notes by Friday. You need to be done with adding the chapter marks by Saturday. You need to create your artwork by Sunday. And so it just pops up and I go, okay, that's my next thing, because I find it hard when I open up my computer to know what to do. And if I have that notification that says artwork, artwork. I just have to go do the artwork and I'm done with it. Sometimes I don't even pay attention to that stuff, but it's great to have it there. And I love Notion as well. I've used Notion forever, but I actually use just for myself because I know the way that I work. I have everything local and I use Obsidian, which is essentially it's kind of like a text-based app that really does so many different things. I've invested a lot of time in getting to know that tool so that it works for me, but I'm not working with a team, so I don't have to share those workflows with anybody else. Things like what Bethany was talking about in terms of Asana and Notion, those have built-in shareability and assignment things that you can tell somebody else to do whatevers. I don't need that. So I'm sticking to everything that's in one place, which I think is fantastic. Do you have any other things that you can do to get those 10 episodes ready that we haven't mentioned?
So I think that there are also topics that you can break out into 2 bodies of episodes. So if there is a lot of information that you want to share, you can break that up into 2. You just kill 2 birds with one stone, right?
Yeah.
So finding ways like that, writing down the topics that you really want to hit and discuss, determining how long you want them to be. And that's why it's called a run of show. It's kind of a breakdown of the timeline of what you want to discuss, having that prepared and looking off to that. And when you're recording your podcast, you're kind of juggling a lot of hats, right? You are talking and discussing the topic. You are looking the time to make sure that you are within a certain time constraint. You are looking at your notes to make sure you're hitting all of your notes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing a myriad of different things. But once you finesse it, I think that you would be more apt to sustain your podcast. And also remind yourself, again, I say it all the time, I'm a broken record, the first season is for learning. You are going to mess up. That is okay. You are going to learn from it and you're going to move on. I promise you. The world isn't going to open and swallow you up because you said something incorrectly on your podcast. And if you did, fun fact, you can take it down. It doesn't have to be live. You're
This
not
is true.
sentenced to having that episode
This is true.
live.
Yep.
So giving yourself grace, giving yourself permission, but also making sure that you're providing yourself with some structure, I think is how you get through the barrier of those 10 episodes.
Absolutely. And I think after, thinking about the barrier of creating that content, then you also have to set up a time there where you can figure out for yourself if what you're doing is working. I'm a huge proponent of adding that stuff in there, which comes back to your goal into what are you measuring? What's going to keep you going? Because that's also a really big thing. I found myself doing tasks over and over and over again and feeling overwhelmed and feeling as if I was working for no reward. And I realized I really started to crave that feedback that I got from people, outreach that I got from people, getting paid, booking a great guest, being able to, get a lead with a sponsor, having a potential client come through. All of those things are things that keep you going, and you got to figure out what that is for you. So being able to see download numbers move, for some people, that's a huge thing that makes them happy. For me, one of the things that keeps me going is feedback. And I ask a lot of it in my shows. They're built around that. So I find lots of joy in getting that email from somebody, in being able to get somebody that tells me that was really helpful. I really loved what you did. That kind of stuff really keeps me going versus looking at my stats all the time. So you have to figure that out and then see if it's not working. Let's say you're looking for feedback. That's been a huge conversation for me lately. What if you're looking for feedback and you're not getting any? You've done 10 episodes and you have not gotten one piece of feedback. Then you stop and you go, how can I add whatever workflow? What can I shift to really focus on being able to get that feedback if that's how you want to measure if things are working for you? So you can't just continue to do things without checking in with yourself. I would say built it in for you, even if when Bethany was talking about doing seasons, being able to think like, oh, what if it's like a seasonal thing and it's like, 10 to 12 episodes. You don't have to stop doing it. You can just set a date for yourself after you publish 12 episodes. It's your date with yourself. What worked? What didn't work? It's your season unwrap up or whatever, season wrap up of the whole thing just with you. And I think that would be super awesome. Now, we have to really address this one huge thing. What about if you actually do Podfade? What if you're done? What if you're what are some things you do to somebody when they come up to you and they're like, I'm really having a hard time, and you know in your heart that it's really time for them to stop? What do you say next?
You can retire your podcast. There's actually a couple of things that you could do.
Yeah.
You could retire your podcast, or you can sell your podcast. And I don't think people are aware of this. You can,
I know, right?
Mind blown. You can sell your podcast. If you, do a Google search. It will show you how to go about it. But if you have treated your podcast like a business, and that's why I always say, even if you are doing it as a passion project, treat it as a business, because you never know when it's going to blow up. Because those passion project podcasts, try saying that 3 times fast.
Oh my gosh.
Those are the ones that all of a sudden they're on Netflix.
Yeah.
So what you're going to want to do is, again, if you have the funds available, trademark your name, copyright it, make sure that all of the images you own. So if you are going to be selling your podcast in the future for whatever reason, all of those type of things, creating a newsletter and having all of those people on your newsletter, all of these things make your podcast more marketable if you want to sell it in the future. So let's say you don't want to sell it, you just want to retire it. Do a quick little episode saying, hey, everything comes to an end. You know, do a taps recording, but also but also honor all of the people who have been on this journey and this ride with
Yeah.
you. The listeners, if you had guests,
Yeah.
anybody that has worked on your podcast and said this was such a learning and phenomenal experience, and it would be remiss of me not to say thank you to all of these people. And just, put it in the ashes on a mantle on your fireplace. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay if you retire your podcast. But I think it's really nice to let your audience know that no additional anythings will be coming forth.
Yeah. One thing that I would say in terms of things to think about if you are going to retire your podcast, out of the the checklist that you need to do as well. One of the number one things that you need to do is you need to have a copy of your files. You need to have a local copy of your episode files somewhere. I cannot tell you how many times folks have let go of their podcast, and it's maybe Podfaded and they don't, and then they cancel their account at Libsyn and they're like, oh, I got to let it go, which is fine. It's fine. And then about a year or so later, they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, I really want to have that interview I did with so-and-so, or I'm really I want to see if I can listen to these other episodes. And they're like, do you have a copy? We're like, no. It's sort of like, that's kind of like saying to, like, you move out of your house, like you stop, like you move, you're no longer paying rent in that apartment for a year. And then you come back and you're like, why is my stuff not here? Like, well, it's kind of like that. So make sure you download your stuff, and you would be so surprised. You can do it super easy. Like if you have actually a Mac or a PC, open up the Apple Podcast app or iTunes, depending upon where you are, subscribe to the podcast and hit download all. Boom. You got them all, right? They're there. Mind you, I would say that you should keep a copy of your MP3, your finished file, on your computer, or at least on Dropbox or Google Drive or somewhere or even an external hard drive. Pull it in there. Just pull it in there. Make sure that you have a copy. You never know when you're going to use it. And maybe in the future, you can sell it. Maybe it's a series of things. You can have that be a downloadable digital product that you put together, repurpose together later on when you have more time to be able to do something like that. So keep that for yourself. Keep all of your assets. Make sure that you pay attention to all of that stuff, because you never know what's going to happen. Now, you can also, instead of just breaking up with your podcast totally and getting a divorce, you could just go on hold a little bit. And so what you can do on places like, at least for Libsyn, because we host all the podcasts, right? And you pay a X amount per month, depending upon what your account number is, or whatever it is that you're trying to publish. You can actually downgrade to a $5 a month account and keep it at that. Step away from it. Give it a year. See how you feel. And maybe in the end you are going to cancel completely, but you never know when you're going to be like, you know what? I kind of just want it to live there. That's what I've done with Elsie's yoga class. Elsie's yoga class, I haven't touched. It's still there. But it's on, and people still listen to it all the time and do yoga classes with me, but I'm not actively doing anything with it. So that's something for you to think about for all that stuff. Yeah.
And I think that's also a great idea if you are in the middle of seasons.
Yeah.
So you can also downgrade to $5 when you're in between seasons.
Yes,
and then increase
absolutely.
it whenever,
and increase it. Mm-hmm.
when you're ready. And to go back to what we were talking about, organization tools, if you have all of your MP3s on the organization tools, you should have access to all of your audio at all times, at any time. So God forbid something happens, you have that availability there embedded within the body of those organization tools. So
Absolutely.
Very great point, Elsie.
Absolutely. You can always have all that stuff in there. It's amazing what you can do, but do keep that in mind, especially if you, because right now you can repurpose. I mean, you can repurpose some of your episodes. Let's say you stop producing that and repurpose them into a YouTube video with a static image on the front. You could do all kinds of TikToks with just your voiceover on top of anything. There's just so many different things that you can do with audio right now and repurposing your content when you are no longer producing that content on the daily, right? So that's something to think about for sure. All right. So I think that we are, is there something else that you want to make sure folks know before we start to talk about all of these questions that they have? We have lots of things in there. So I got to look at in there. Team, if you can let me know if there are any questions that you'd like me to take a look at quickly. If not, I'm going to read all the stuff in there. Please add a Q to the front, Q and colon. But Bethany, anything from you?
I do have to say again, we are taking your shame, your guilt, your
Yes.
despondentness if you have Podfaded. It happens. It is okay. We are giving you permission to forgive yourself. It literally happens to professionals and the best of us.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you want to hop back on it, now is the time, now is the hour. This is the wake-up call. But if you want to retire it, and that's okay too.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's true. It's like we want to reiterate that a lot. There's no shame in pod fading. And again, we're going to just reiterate all as well, because we had people going like, what's pod fade? Because we did not explain it. Thank you so much, Bethany. Here we go. Everybody needs to be inside of our brains. But it is that kind of unexpected fading away. Right? It's not like I'm done. Yeah, it's like we're gone. Just like all of a sudden, like, where'd they go? Who knows? That's the pod fade. So unexpected fading away due to it being a little challenging or life getting in the way. Okay, I'm going to look at the stuff here. There's been so many wonderful communications in there. Oh, here we go. Shoestring. How about this, Bethany? Shoestring budget team. Where to start?
There are so many things that you can do for free. So you can do you can do your DAW on free. If you have an Apple, you can use GarageBand. If you don't have an Apple, you can use Audacity. You can get a great microphone for under $100. Just make sure that you have the right equipment. You can get use plug-in headphones, please. You can get those for I don't know, like less than 30, I think, everywhere. And that's how you can start off your podcast, budget friendly. If you want to incorporate a team, again, you can go to places like Fiverr. If you have a Vote Technical School near you, you can go to that school and see if they offer audio engineering. See if they have an internship or an opportunity for those kiddos to work on your audio. If they have graphic designing at a tech school near you, can you get an internship so that somebody can create your cover art or your graphics? There are all of these opportunities. All you have to do is just take a look. I mean, you could have your grandson or your niece or your nephew or your kiddo be like, hey, I'm hitting you up and you're gonna, do some audio editing for me, because these kids know everything. So if you're looking for somebody to write your copy and your show notes, again, you can get somebody on Fiverr or somebody who is just trying to start off in copywriting. Or artificial intelligence. That is a big thing that's happening right now, especially trying to get show notes that recognize search engine optimization or SEO keywords. That's really important to pull your podcast from all of the podcasts on the World Wide Web.
One of the biggest bits of advice that I would have in terms of the team components of it is making sure that you know your tools. You have to know your tools. I can almost guarantee so many folks over here that I'm sure you didn't know what you're already paying for also did that. There's so much that we don't pay attention to. Let's take Libsyn. Obviously, this is a Libsyn event, if you will. So what we do at Libsyn for YouTube is if you upload your audio show into your Libsyn account, if you hook up YouTube, it actually transcodes your audio into a video and publishes out to YouTube for you without you doing anything other than setting it all up. There are ways to optimize it, of course. And I'm sure the team, if you can put in the link to how to do that in case people want to know. Mind you, Libsyn is not the only host that does that. There are actually other either podcast hosts and also other services that do that as well for you. But if you're already paying for Libsyn, why not use that, right? That's part of it. Now, I just found out Notion, that I do pay for. I don't remember how much. I think it's a yearly pay, but it's very inexpensive. I believe it's around something like $5 a month, which is quite doable. They have just released AI services in Notion, and you have like all of this copywriting stuff that happens for you that I'm amazed at this point in time. That is a free service. There's no upgrade to it. And I'm astounded by the functionality that gives me. There's a lot of places like, like let's say Zoom, if you're doing remote recording for Zoom, right? You're going to obviously there's a free service for you to be able to do that, but you're going to have to keep your shows less than 40 minutes so that you don't hit that, whatever that is, right? So when you're doing things for free, you have to work around the parameters that they set for you, which can be done. But again, a Libsyn $20 a month plan gives you a free built-in remote recording tool in it that we just released. Again, that's amazing. That's so great. And it's got the best quality. So and it's called Libsyn Connect. It's built in, but I'm sure you didn't know that. I mean, mind you, we just released it. But there's a lot of things that you are currently paying for that does all of these other things you didn't even know the service did. So go ahead and take advantage of things like that. Now we have another question here. This one is for you. This is from Jeff. What is a discovery call, Bethany?
A discovery call is usually between 15 to 30 minutes call with a service provider or a coach or someone to see if you are a great fit and for them to tell you what services they offer and if you guys are just made in heaven to work together. So it is a very succinct conversation about what your needs are, if they can provide you with help with those needs, and do essentially you think that you're a great match to work together. A lot of discovery calls the majority of them are sales pitches where they're going to share with you, what they do and what the prices are. And they're going to see if you guys are a great match, and they're going to say, is this something that you want to invest in? So if you are looking just to have a chat with somebody, kind of like a pick your brain, I would share that if you're scheduling the discovery call. Say, I don't really have the means to afford you currently. Is there an option for me to pick your brain? If there is a price for that, it will be significantly reduced from you retaining them for that service. So you can always ask, can I just pick your brain? The worst they can say is no, and you literally are like still fine. You're still okay.
Yeah.
And I do have to say, Elsie, just to champion what you said in regarding to the recording studio in Libsyn, my oldest client, she's phenomenal. She's amazing. And she records within the body of Libsyn, and she loves it because it's easy, it's accessible to her. And then after she records, she just downloads it. I walked her through the process of downloading it and uploading it to me so that I could edit it for her. Easy breezy cover girl. So I just wanted to let you know.
Yes,
it's working. That. And you have royalty-free music as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's for Libsyn Studio. Yeah, because there's another. Yeah, so we've got two different. There's Libsyn Studio and there's Libsyn Connect, which is the remote recording stuff. Please put all those links in the chat, folks. So I'm going to answer this question really quickly, Mia. You asked, where do I hold my templates? So the templates I usually have within the the platform that I'm doing the work in. So if I'm using Notion, I have Notion templates that are built inside of the UI for Notion. If I'm using Obsidian, which is what I tend to use a lot of, it's all built in there. Like I have a templates thing. And so I can just insert the template and do it forward. If you want to keep it super simple, because I'm very, very text based type of a person. I love text, like plain text. You can actually just do that in Google Docs. You can create a template in Google Docs. You can go in there and just insert the template and there you have it. So that's how I keep my templates for that. Obviously, when I was editing my own show, I had templates in GarageBand. I had templates for Amadeus Pro, which is the DAW that I used. I had built those in and I literally just duplicated it and turned it on. So, and started doing it in there. So it was fairly easy for me to do that. I'm going to scroll through the questions here really quickly to see if I can find anything else. If you see something, Bethany, let me know before we start to wrap it up. If anybody has any questions, I'm just trying to, let's see if I can.
So I see one from a Max May. Firstly, you're welcome, Jeff. Thank you for the question. But I see one from Max May that says, what are good tips, resources for podcasts that aren't pod fading, but would like to increase engagement / downloads? Great question. What are you doing currently? Because I promise you, you think you're doing more than you are. No dig on you, but it can feel like that we're doing a lot and we're not seeing results when we aren't. So I would, and it sounds like a lot, every day for 30 minutes, engage in social media, engage with people who you think would want to listen to your podcast, engage with people who you may not think is the audience for your podcast, and just engage with people, start a conversation. Put things in. If you have a newsletter, if you have an email list, share all of your podcast information in there. Reach out to different live seminars like this one in regards to marketing and engagement and downloads. Get tips, tricks, and ideas from that and then implement them. Because when it feels like you've exhausted all the measures, you haven't. Mm-hmm. And when you do that one additional thing, that's what brings all of the traction.
Yep. We have also another question here. It's slightly along the same lines. I'm just going to add another part of it. This is from Alex. Says, I run a show, Perfect Sense podcast for my employer, Safe Credit Union, seeing download growth in recent months and want to create more engagement. Thoughts on how to keep that momentum? Well, another thing, in addition to what Bethany just mentioned, is, are you very clear in your podcast of what you want them to do? So, do you have something built in there? Is it part of your intro? Hey, welcome to the show. You can always touch base with me by emailing blah, 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 and asking questions or commenting on the topics that we have at hand. Today, we have the host, Bethany is with me today, right? Every single time you start with saying to people how they can contact you and leave you feedback. And also not say something like, just send us some feedback. Tell us how we're doing. Don't do that. Just say like, hey, send us some feedback. Did you like Bethany's answer about how to repurpose your podcast episodes? Let us know if that was helpful, or let us know if you have a better solution to that problem. That's a very specific question that you're asking for. Or you can actually use it if it's like super something like an anniversary coming up, and say like, hey guys, we're going to have our 100th episode coming out really soon. Can you please send us some audio feedback about one key thing that you learned from our podcast? It would be so amazing. How do you do it? You can just attach a voicemail to your email and send it to us. You can record it on your phone. Like, be that specific, but remind them to do it over and over and over again, because you'll then understand what it actually takes for them to convert and to do the action that you wanted them to do. So all of those things are something that you can definitely check out.
And also, Elsie, can I just say one more thing on that?
Please.
Have an easy point of contact.
Yes.
Have your podcast have its own email address.
Correct.
If you
This
have
is
the bandwidth,
so key.
if you have the bandwidth, have your podcast have its own social media pages.
Yes.
Make it easier for your audience to find you, because although I may know you as Max May, someone may just know you as your podcast name. So they're looking up your podcast name. They're not necessarily looking for you. So make it easy for your audience to engage you. The number one and easiest way is to create a podcast email just through Gmail. Easy breezy, cover girl.
So easy. So easy. I've done that from the beginning, and it's so easy to process it as well. You can open up the email, see if you got the email, keep it. That's inbox 0 all the time. You won't miss anything. It's how I manage my show, is because of that specific email that I have. Only things for the show go to that email. It's how I cultivate feedback, conversations, all of that stuff. So easy. Just get a free Gmail account for sure. All right, folks, we're going to be wrapping this up here. We're at top of the hour now. That said, Miss Bethany, do you have anything that you would like to share that's happening with you here in the future? We're going to put all of your links in the description of this video if anybody wants to contact with you for a discovery call. And also following her on her social, as you can see on the screen, it is right there. Yeah.
Yes. So my company name, again, is Crackers in Soup. It has nothing to do with food. It has everything to do with podcasting. So if you type in Crackers in Soup, everything that doesn't have to do with food is us. What I will be doing in the future is I am going to be speaking at She Podcast in June.
Yay!
So if you enjoyed this presentation, come see us live. We're going to be hugging and laughing and guffawing and dropping knowledge, because we're wicked smart all up in here.
Yeah, for sure. And also, please follow Bethany on the socials, particularly on LinkedIn or Instagram or anywhere. She's always dropping a lot of incredible wisdom. Please have her on your feed. So go ahead and follow her right away. Now, again, I just want to remind you that next week we have Dave Jackson from Libsyn with Podcasting Basics series. There's going to be a link dropped in there for you. Dave's been hanging out in the chat here, so you got to know a little bit of the knowledge that he has to drop. He's got so much information coming up. And again, just to let you know, for those of you who are using Libsyn, I mean, we do have Libsyn Connect. We have Libsyn Studio built in. If you are already a client, if you already host your show with Libsyn, $20 a month already, you're paying for it already. And you get all of these bonus features. Test that stuff out. It is so good. But yeah, I think that is all we have going on for today, Miss Bethany. Thank you so much for showing up and being here and imparting your wisdom with us again. And hopefully, y'all, we'll see you guys with our next event very soon. Keep an eye on all the YouTube stuff. Okay.
Bye. Thanks everybody for